The All Black podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black become the best run teams in sport. To listen to this episode and all the All Black podcasts, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. This is the All Blacks podcast.
Kia ora whānau, welcome to episode 4 of the All Black podcast powered by SAP. We're out of the studio today because the All Black Seven side are about to head away, defend their gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham starting July 31st. So we're at the Mount Rugby Club Blake Park, home of the Sevens, and to chat with the head coach, Clark Laidlaw. Thank you, Clark. Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you.
Firstly, mate, you catch rugby in the weekend. Did you, first test match of the year for the All Blacks versus the Irish, did you get along?
I didn't get along. I was just saying to you a little bit of a funny story. I watched the first half at home, obviously enjoying the first half, All Blacks taking their opportunities well, and I had to go to a Top Gun fancy dress party starting at 8 o'clock, so I caught the second half on the Sunday morning, and as I say, I thought Ireland done some good stuff. I thought the All Blacks were pretty ruthless around taking opportunities. You know, I'm sure both teams will be thinking they can play better this weekend, so it'll be quite exciting. You know, as I said, I take my hat off to Ireland coming down here, playing 5 games. Takes a bit of guts, doesn't it, at the end of their year to expose themselves to 5 pretty tough games. And I think the anticipation of losing to Ireland the last time, the All Blacks and the public have got really behind those 5 games. So I'm really enjoying it. It feels almost like a mini Lions tour, doesn't it, where you've got the same team here for the month.
It is, and one thing we often talk about is that we don't do tours like we used to. There's not tours like there used to be, but this is almost as close as we can getting to that. And I'm the same as you. Really anticipation around that first test. Quite nervous. Geez, they started well, Ireland, didn't they? First try and putting phase after phase together, dominating contact. And I thought, geez, we could be in for a tough night here. But like you say, when the boys got the opportunity, they absolutely took it and were able to put points on the board. Yeah,
and that's what New Zealand and All Blacks can do. You give them a half chance and they can take it. And they've obviously made some tweaks around their attack. You know, they stopped that line speed a little bit better, didn't they, with a wider passing game and put Ireland under pressure there. So, you know, the game of chess begins, doesn't it? Ireland will try and stop that this week, and I'm sure the All Blacks will have a couple of tricks up their sleeves to continue that momentum. So you're right, it's great to see a series. I think everybody looking around the world, there's some good rugby going on, in these test windows. Yeah,
there was a heap of good rugby at the weekend. Most importantly, though, who did you go as to the Top Gun party?
Goose.
Goose.
Yeah. It's my next door neighbour actually had a full-on Top Gun outfit, which was a godsend because I wasn't sure what I was going to go as. So that was a little bit of fortune there. So it was it was a quiet night, but it was quite enjoyable.
Good reports on the sequel too. It's always hard to follow up an absolute classic, but it sounds like they've done the job. Yeah,
I went and watched it on the Sunday after a couple of beers dressed as Goose. So I took the outfit off to go to the movies on the Sunday, but my wife and I took my 2 oldest daughters along. So you're right, it's a good movie. Get out there and watch it if you haven't seen it.
Lastly, on the All Blacks, it's always too. There's always that connection to the Sevens program, and I think of the guys who are starting on Saturday, Rico, Artie, good connection to the Sevens. Guys in the squad like Caleb as well, and Akira. Quite often, Seven, even Bodie back in the National Sevens all those years ago, caught a lot of attention for the way he played there. There's a great connection between the 2 teams, isn't there? Yeah,
I think the type of athlete you're after at the top level of 15s is well suited to being the type of athlete that we need to play Sevens. And you look at Artie's second try, it's pure athleticism, power. Yeah. There's not too much coaching in that try. It's his athletic ability, which I remember watching him play here as an 18-year-old for Wellington when Titch picked him. I was working with the team back in 2011 and 12, and he was an outstanding athlete. He was a bit skinnier and a bit more raw, but that raw power and pace that he showed on the weekend was there when he was 18. So I think that is the connection. We've got a lot of young players in the squad at the minute who, hopefully will come through this team and do well here, but go on to be Super Rugby players and hopefully an All Black if they can.
Absolutely, mate. Before we get into the guts of the interview, a few warm-up questions, and up until this point, we've had New Zealanders on the podcast, but your heritage is Scottish. So can you tell me the first international game and maybe even first All Black game that you went to as well?
Oh, that's a good question. The first, my old man played for Scotland.
Of course, that's right.
So I can't remember the first international I went to, but I do know I only missed 2 between 1983 and 1988. So
Probably had a few change rooms as well in those days.
I only missed 2 home Scottish internationalists in that time.
That's brilliant.
So I went to a lot of games, and I can remember getting taken out of school by my dad to go and watch the All Blacks train for 2 days at Peebles. Brilliant. So they were playing the south of Scotland in, it must have been 85 or something like that. But he took me out of school and said, "You don't need to go to school these 2 days, we'll go and watch the All Blacks train."
Yeah, good.
So, yeah, a lot of fun memories around Test match rugby.
Favourite players growing up?
Gary Armstrong, halfback from Scotland, from my club.
Feisty competitor.
Yeah, so he came from Jed.
Yeah.
He was an outstanding player. So he was always an idol, I guess, growing up. Somebody that was so close to us as a town, playing for the British Lions, and he played for Newcastle when it first went professional and won the Premiership. So he was probably our idol. I loved watching Sevens players play. Guys like Serevi.
Yeah.
As I was sort of starting playing Sevens, was coming to the end of his career, so people like that really inspired you around, I guess, what was possible in a rugby field.
Yeah. I know music, songs, tunes, singing, big part of the Sevens environment. When Clark Laidlaw's on his way to training, what's on the Spotify playlist?
Anything. I've got no genre whatsoever. I love listening to...
mix, is it?
I love listening to, I guess, 90s, 2000, Oasis, Stereophonics, that type of stuff I grew up with. Living in the UK, you had the chance to go to Tea in the Park in Glastonbury and live music a lot. So we used to enjoy ourselves on those weekends. Yeah. Jerry Cinnamon, Scottish artist, a little bit newer, so I'm enjoying him. But yeah, mate, when you've got 3 daughters and a 20-man rugby squad, you definitely get exposed to different types of music. And I enjoy any music. I genuinely enjoy any music, and I love seeing live music.
Yeah, brilliant. 3 guests, anyone. If you could invite anyone along to dinner, who would you invite, and maybe what's on the menu? You're cooking, all right? There's no bringing any specialist help in.
Kurt Baker's chicken pie. Oh. So he's got a little Instagram, Kurt's Kitchen.
He's not bad, is he, in the kitchen?
It's he does a good kitchen. So chicken pie, man, I've got no idea. That's a great question. I'd be here all day. I think Billy Connolly in his prime.
Brilliant.
So he was, a Scottish comedian, obviously. A lot of time for him. Nelson Mandela.
Brilliant.
So my daughter's been learning a little bit about him at school at the minute. So that'd be a good mix, wouldn't it? Billy Connolly, Nelson Mandela.
Great connection to rugby as well, Nelson.
Yeah.
One more.
Maybe what's Kerr, the basketball coach at the Golden State Warriors?
Steve Kerr.
Brilliant. So he interests me as a coach. Seems like he's got great connection with his players. He's obviously a successful coach, but I'd love to have a catch up with him at one stage.
He did. He looked like a bit of a champion. He features quite a lot in that Last Dance with Michael Jordan, doesn't he? He looked like a good personality when he was playing as well.
Even just some of the stuff recently around some of the troubles in America, the way he makes a stand and has some really principles that he obviously stands by. I think he'd be a really interesting guy to catch up with.
Absolutely, mate. Good dinner party. Yeah. Top Gun outfits and chicken pie. Happy days.
What more do you want?
Firstly, I want to just talk a little bit about where we are. We're here at Blake Park, we're in the Mountain Rugby Club rooms. Great spot, but also not far away is where the 2 Sevens programs are run out of here. And also it's where we see some cricketers and black caps train here. We see Olympic athletes close to the hockey turf. Every Saturday morning there's hundreds of kids playing junior rugby. Like, in some regards, this is a pretty special place, and I can imagine, and I'm guessing, a great place to operate your program out of. Yeah,
we're so fortunate. It's an amazing location in New Zealand for a start. The Mount is a little bit strange for us training in the winter. We usually finish by now, but you're right. It's a real hub of activity. We're lucky at the base, as you say. There's professional athletes, Olympians, different sports coming. Male and female rugby players coming through there every day, but also to be based in a community where we can get into the community. As you say, one of my daughters plays hockey here, and my youngest one's just started playing netball, who's only 6. It's quite cute watching the netball on a Saturday morning. But you see Debbie Fuller coaching a team at netball, and then you get your daughter playing at the same place. So I guess it's quite unique, isn't it, for New Zealand to have such a link between the professional game and different sports as well as the community game, almost side by side.
I know, and it's it's probably a real benefit in the sense you've got guys like Joe Webber. I know his boy plays for Te Puna and he loves being at his rugby on a Saturday morning. I know on the girls' side, Portia coaches the Alataki team as much as she possibly can. That sort of stuff's got to, one, be really good for you to keep balance, but also keep you really grounded as well, I suppose, because high performance can be pretty intense and you can get in a bit of a bubble, but to have that release and that connection to community's got to be really special.
Yeah, and you can take yourself too seriously.
Yeah,
totally.
You know,
so I'm sure if we've had a poor tournament and Joy's down at Te Puna or at his rugby league on a Sunday, that maybe a couple of locals tell him that we've had a bad tournament. And
yeah.
I think that's really important, you know, not getting too serious and too caught up in your own world, understanding where we all started the game, which was at clubs, school teams, is crucial to not only now, but to people giving back to the game as we go forward. You know, so guys like Joey, I know both his daughters play rugby, his son plays rugby, so helping, I guess, inspire that next generation to stay in sport. Doesn't matter if it's rugby, hockey, netball. You know, I love sport, and I think it's healthy for, you know, for communities to be involved in sport.
Absolutely. I want to start talking a little about the Sevens program. Firstly, just go backwards a little bit to the Olympics last year and just talk a little bit about that, perhaps debrief it, because I know, firstly, it was fantastic you got to go, because that was up in the air for a really long time. Like, actually, weeks before the tournament, there was still, you know, perhaps a little bit of uncertainty. Boys went well. You know, didn't get the gold medal, but played some really good sevens. But it wasn't a traditional Olympics as well. Like, talking to some of the players, you know, post the tournament, you were very in and out. You didn't get to mingle with, you know, some of the other athletes that you often do. You didn't get to hang around and watch other teams, and which is all part of the Olympic experience. But what was it like for you?
Yeah, well, I think that's all fair, isn't it? You know, we haven't been to an Olympics before, but I've been to, you know, 3 Commonwealth Games as a player and a coach. So we definitely missed that experience of post the tournament, or even, you know, during the tournament, when we could go and watch other sports, mingle in the dining halls. You know, there was definitely some heavy restrictions around COVID. So, you know, we missed out on that. But the New Zealand team done an amazing job of still having that feeling. So through the NZOC and that Olympic committee with New Zealand, I thought they'd done an amazing job at still creating a real spirit within the New Zealand team. And I thought the 2 Sevens teams really contributed to that hugely. The way we helped welcome people in, obviously the way the 2 teams played was obvious, you know, that the girls doing so well to win and us to get a silver. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I really enjoyed being part of a bigger team and really feeling that, I guess, that chemistry of a wider New Zealand team. And the tournament, it was a little bit strange, you know, playing a proper tournament in front of no spectators. Yeah. To generate an atmosphere, you know, and all the players are used to playing in front of big crowds was different. But I guess once the whistle went, it was the same for everybody, you know, and leading into the tournament, it was the same for everybody. Nobody had played, so there was no advantage, you know, either way. And you're right that, you know, ultimately, you know, we felt disappointed to not get the win. You know, it was certainly tough to take, and it was a tough couple of months after, if I'm being brutally honest, for everybody in different ways and in different days. You know, it was it was really interesting for me to go through that. We'd been successful. Com Games, World Cup, World Series. We had all 3 leading into the Olympics. You know, we'd won all 3, and then to come up short.
Is part of that because you're not sort of back on the tools straight away as well and distracted, because you've got a lot of time to think about it? You know, like, is that part of the challenge when you have to almost decompress from these big events?
Yeah, and I think, you know, it was 5 years of work rather than just 4. 1 year was a holding year. There's a lot of emotion and energy that went into not only just keeping the programme going, but actually surviving as a rugby team. You know, there was times there where we weren't sure. You know, there was a large amount of the staff lost their job for 3 months. You know, there was players like Celesi and these guys that didn't come back from 15s that we'd had the year before. Etienne and Caleb went and played a full Super Rugby season, then came back late. So there's a lot of energy went into those 5 years. And you're right, once we sort of dusted ourselves off, to get back playing would have been the tonic. To sort of flush that, and then we ended up hitting more issues with not being able to travel, and then the World Series got back up and running, and we were stuck here again. So it was a tricky period post Olympics, but we're really proud of the work we've done for the 4 or 5 years leading in. We were probably a couple of kickoffs against Fiji away if we'd won maybe one of those. And out of the 3 that we lost over that game, it could have totally been a different game. And but that's sevens. You know, I'm really content that we gave it everything we had. I think sometimes you get caught up in your own story and forget that the opposition are trying as hard as you. And Fiji are they're no mugs when it comes to playing sevens.
Absolutely not.
You know, if you look at beating a Kenyan in a marathon at the Olympics, it's probably quite similar to try and beat Fiji in a sevens game at the Olympics. It's the yin and the yang, isn't it? The natural flair and power that Fiji have got, and we need to play an efficient game that limits them, and we need to play really well to beat them. But so it was a great challenge. And then since then, you know, since Christmas was probably the hardest period, when we lost the chance to go to the World Series. I found that really difficult. I found it really difficult for our players to stay motivated. And it's only since we started playing I've realised how hard that period was between Christmas and probably, you know, March, April time.
We
when
were
we
back
actually
in lockdown, we couldn't travel again, could we? The series were happening overseas, weren't they? Teams were playing, but we weren't able to be a part of it.
Yeah, and it felt like it just kept, you know, the light of the tunnel just kept getting shut off from us. We thought we were going to get to Spain, then we thought we'd get to LA and Vancouver, they got postponed. So eventually we obviously got to go to Singapore and Vancouver, and it was good to get back out there and start being a proper rugby team again.
But the thing, and I know it's, like you say, probably the most recent memory is always the hardest one, in the sense that, you know, you went to the Olympic Games, played really well, but did get a silver. But, you know, and I don't know how you guys do this, but from the Olympic Games before that and everything that happened in between was a vast improvement on where we come from. You know, you'd won some pinnacle events. You know, you're the Commonwealth defending champions, done really well at World Cups, done really well at a lot of things, with some experienced guys and with a whole lot of new guys. So you've got to be, and the team have to be hugely proud of that period, you know, because it's been a great 5 years in between those 2 Olympic events. Yeah,
and it has, and we've got to practice what we preach, I guess, and not get wrapped up in just winning and losing. So the way we've built the team, you know, the way the team operates behind the scenes, the culture we've developed around, you know, a real belonging to this team, is something we'll always be proud of. And, you know, whenever I finish up with a team or I get the sack if we don't win, you know, I think we can all be proud of that. You know, everybody that's been involved, the staff and players, because we're going to leave it in a really good spot. You know, the team's in a great place. Yep, our performance, you know, we need to keep improving that, obviously, and we've got some pinnacle events coming up that we're going to try and win. But ultimately, you know, sevens is such a fickle game. You just got to make sure your humility is in check and you don't get too big an ego, because it'll find it quite quickly. You know, you look at that final against Australia in London. We had a pretty good tournament, and one kick-off, Australia just rattle the ball and it bounces and their guy catches it and he scores at their end. So that's how fine lines the game can be. The Olympic final was quite similar. So we get that. But, you know, I guess our job's to really try and push and try to win these pinnacle events. Man, it hurts. It hurts all right.
But we have, albeit the wheels have turned slowly, and we did miss some tournaments at the start of the year, but we have been able to get along to, I think, 4 series, you said, and some of the results have been pretty good. You know, I think when you look, you were second in the first tournament that you got back into in Singapore, losing to Fiji, 5th in Vancouver, lost to Aussie in London, but actually not too bad considering how long you've been out of that series and not really playing. I know you guys go hammer and tongs at each other down here, and probably some of the, you know, some pretty excellent game of sevens, I'd suggest, but not in that tournament environment. Reasonably happy with how it's been going since you've been back in the mix? Yeah, we are. You know, we've debuted six new players, which is quite a lot. We've got some guys that have only played a couple of tournaments and now, you know, starting games, and with losing a bit of leadership and a little bit of experience and players that have played over the last couple of years, some of the other guys have really had to lead. You know, Sam and Dylan and Joey have took on leadership roles. So it kind of feels like each run of our team has almost moved up one. You know, our young players are now playing, our younger players that have played are now in the middle tier, and other guys are leading. So that's been really challenging, but quite fun, if I'm being honest. It's really tested us to see if we can really grow as a group again. And as you say, 2 finals out of 4, it'd be nice to win one of those. You know, I thought in Singapore we weren't good enough to beat Fiji that day. You know, if I'm being honest, I thought we battled hard in Singapore and found a way, but we didn't play that well. And then ironically, we played better in Toulouse, you know, and missed a quarter final through points difference. So for the first time, you know, ever to miss a quarter final. So that was really interesting just to see how we coped with that. It was obviously disappointing, but
it was actually really good for us because it keeps showing us that we really need to work hard to improve. And then the next week, we played 1, 2 and 3 from Toulouse, so we played Fiji, Ireland and France the next week. So that was a really tough draw, and to come through that and make the final was really pleasing, and I think gave the younger players in the group and the less experienced players some real confidence that what they're doing and what we're trying to do around how we want to play the game really works.
Yeah.
And yet we ran out a wee bit of steam against Australia in the final, but again, it'd been nice to win, but it shows us, one, we're going in the right direction, and two, we're not quite ready yet, so we've got to keep working hard.
I'll tell you what, one thing that's really tough to gauge is when you look around, like, there's Fiji, there's South Africa, and they're really strong sides. New Zealand's a really strong side, but France are doing quite well. Ireland have been in a final. Argentina are playing really good at the moment and third on the World Series ladder, albeit an interesting season. Is this potentially as open a pinnacle event that you've ever taken a team to?
I think so. I think, if you take Com Games and World Cup, because obviously Argentina won't play and France won't play in Com Games, but I think I said to you the semi-finals in London were for Commonwealth Games team. So we played Fiji and obviously Australia played Samoa. Samoa are probably as good as I've seen them maybe since 2011-12. Wow. Real power and pace. They're a real handful. They've made 2 semi-finals in a row. I know they're floating around in the third seeds of the pools for Com Games. That'll be interesting.
Who knows?
Who knows? So I think you're right, mate. I said to you before I think there's 11 teams or 11 countries made a semi-final. There's 14 made a quarter-final.
Wow.
So as a product, the World Series is now delivering around the competitiveness. We talked a wee bit about All Blacks in Ireland. I think the reason there's so much expectation and excitement because everybody thought it's going to be tight games. So the World Series and the men's programme is ridiculously tight. And if you get it slightly wrong, we say Toulouse as an example, we still won 2 games out of the 3, but we just didn't score enough points. So even scoring points or stopping points is becoming so important. I think the Com Games will be really similar, where you'll actually really have to go for it against your lesser ranked teams to score some points, because losing a game is a possibility. It'd be great to win all your pool games, but it's so tight that it's not a given.
Mate, it's pretty exciting actually at the moment. We're having the Moana Pacifica and Fiji Jura in the local competition. Like you say, having an Oceania competition a couple of weeks ago for sevens. It just feels like there's some real depth and there's some real energy around those teams and those rugby communities. And I think, a lot of the Fiji and Samoan communities are enjoying seeing a lot more of their players and their teams in this part of the world. And that's maybe one of the benefits of COVID is it's, for so often, and Kiwis as well, would have so many of our players plying their trade in other parts of the world, and we actually didn't get to see a lot of them.
Yeah, I think it feels like there's a real momentum in rugby at the minute. I don't know if it's because I'm involved with it, but you're right. It's there's obviously less Kiwis leaving. It feels like there's more New Zealanders staying here because they want to stay here, and through the last couple of years there's been good reason. And with those 2 teams, how amazing was it to watch the Fiji Drua play in Suva with a full crowd. I'm sure Moana Pacifica will head that way next year and get a couple of home games over in the islands, and it's beautiful to see. It's it makes it tougher. Obviously, the last thing I want is more Fijians and Samoans being good at playing rugby, but I think it's what the world needs. I think it's what the game needs. The more depth at the top levels, whether it's in the club competitions around the world or internationally, is a good thing. The closer the competition is a good thing for sponsors and TV and so on. So it's it does feel like there's a lot of momentum in the game at the minute.
Right, mate, you picked a squad. Happy days. You've put a team together. Firstly, a little bit of adversity with injury, which is so often the case when I've heard you describe that you play a sport where you have to, sprint 100 metres, have a UFC fight, and then sprint 100 metres again. That's the reality of the sport you're coaching, and there is going to be some dings and dongs. Unfortunately, experienced players like Timmy Mickelson, who's been an absolute, rock and foundation of our sevens side. Andrew Newstub, who he was outstanding at the Olympics or has been outstanding in the last 2 or 3 seasons. Such good sevens players, both out injured. That's just a reality of sevens rugby, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's it's not an easier way of saying it, is it?
Yeah.
It's really disappointing to lose really good players. You know, it's disappointing to lose any player, but you know, the two players you've just described are quality, proven, world-class sevens players. You know, Timmy, over a number of years, he's had a real tricky time since Olympics. He had a bit of a knee injury. He's then picked up a sort of calf, soleus, Achilles injury. And he's had to battle over that. He's actually back, sort of trotting around a wee bit now and getting back into running. But you know, the Com Games are going to come up too quickly. And Andrew, with his ACL reconstruction, you know, he done that in Singapore. At the time, he sort of hobbled off, and we weren't, you know, didn't really pick up how serious it was going to be. But you know, after a couple of hours and when he got home, we all realised pretty quickly that, you know, it was going to be a significant injury. And then just recently, Kitty Onavai, our young forward, who was, you know, really starting to understand the game and understand his own body and what it takes to be a professional rugby player, has picked up a pretty bad leg break and dislocation of his ankle. So there are three players that, you know, would definitely have made our selection, you know, tougher than it was. It was still tight in a few positions, but if you added those three back in a 20-man squad, it becomes pretty deep in your squad. So, but that is rugby. It's you know, there's nothing we can do around that. And the team we've picked, we think is a really exciting team. It's got a real mix of some real experience with Scott Curry coming back, and then Sam and Dylan and Joey leading the team. Great
for Sam because he missed the Olympics, didn't he? So you know, fantastic for him to be back in for a big event.
Yeah, his resilience is something. One of the reasons why he's a leader in the team.
Yeah,
he's had a few injuries.
He has, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he, man, it was a tough day pre-Olympics. He was probably 3 minutes away from the last training session before we jumped on the flight to Tokyo up in Townsville, and yeah, he just tweaked his hamstring and couldn't travel. So that was tough, but he's been amazing since then. He's basically done every training session. He's played every
15s,
tournament.
He's played 15s for the Bay. He's played for Canterbury. And
he got his red and black top. Man, that's giving him an extra leg, I reckon. He's playing for Canterbury, so he was excited around that. So, and yeah, all the way through to younger players, you know, with Shea Clark and Caleb Tingatau and these boys that have played, you know, Moses Leo, they haven't played a lot of rugby. Shea none, Moses 1, and Caleb 4 tournaments. But that's exciting. You know, people probably forget that Etini Nanai Saturu was one. There was 2 tournaments. We picked Caleb Clark off 1 tournament for the last Com Games, but he got appendicitis the week before the tournament. So we have got history of doing that, of selecting some of these young players that we think can play now. You know, these boys can play. They're ready to play, or we wouldn't have picked them. So it's an exciting team.
Is that, you know, for sevens, is that potentially an advantage, that X factor? You know, obviously guys like Scotty Curry and Sam, you know, well-seasoned guys who other teams can potentially scout a little bit. But if you throw some newer guys in there, a bit of X factor. I know Shea played really, really well at the Oceania tournament, didn't he? And probably forced his way in. Like, a little bit harder for oppositions to get gauging them and have some tactics around how to stop, you know, guys like that.
Yeah, I think so. It's you're right. In that X factor, what these younger players bring, it's hard to coach against if they get it right.
Yeah.
You know, because their raw power and speed is a real handful. And I think the way the games went over the last 18 months, most teams are seven in the line defensively.
Yeah.
That's new.
No sweepers.
No sweepers, which, you know, even in a sevens game, sometimes defence can get on top. You know, we pride ourselves on our defence, you know, getting on top. So we've had to tweak how we play a little bit. We need to keep the ball alive a little bit more than maybe setting some rucks. You know, if you look at the way we played in the Olympics, it's quite conservative really at times, and it suited then because we could still create space on the far edge if teams are 6 in the line. But now they're 7, we definitely need to go through teams a little bit more. So guys, you know, with that raw power and footwork become even more important. They're always important, but they're certainly important if they can break the line and tackle break or line break, then we've got a good opportunity of scoring.
End of the month, tournament starts. Talk a little bit about that. Like, firstly, is it an advantage at all that the UK has a more similar climate to here in New Zealand? I know some of the places you go and play sevens are just stupidly hot, and I'm sure you do some work on that and acclimatise and all that sort of stuff, and the lads are fit, but sometimes I flick on the tally there and I think, holy heck, that looks hot. You know, like, is it you know, even just slightly beneficial to be going to an environment that's not massively different than what you're coming from?
Yeah, I think it's one controllable we don't have to worry about, or uncontrollable we don't really have to worry about. certainly pre-Olympics, man, we done a lot of work around our heat acclimatisation before we left here. We're lucky to have a heat chamber here at training, and through Waikato University we're able to use that. So it's one less thing to think about, really. There's still potential for the mighty UK summer to get up there. But our players are used to it. We've got a lot of strategies now. We've done a lot of work for Olympics, which will stand us in really good stead around how we pre-cool or how we cool after each game and between days. So that stands us in good stead. If it does get up there, because it can get to 30 in the UK at that time of the year. But
geez, if it gets to 30 in the UK, every man and his dog will have this top off. He'll be in the park, he'll be down to the off licence. It's all go in the UK when it hits 30, isn't it?
18 degrees and it tops off in Scotland. So it's I'm sure it won't be 30 degrees up in Birmingham. But no, we're excited to go to it's a real rugby stadium, Coventry. It's close. I played there when I was coaching London Irish. I think the crowd will be right on top of it. If you end up playing, say, England at home, it'll be a great atmosphere over the 3 days. And
just last thing on the tournament is it's our traditional sevens format. You guys are going in. I've heard you say things like minus 5 days sort of thing. Is it like a more traditional preparation compared to obviously things have been very non-traditional over the last sort of 12 and 18 months, but are you able to get in there and do it the way you want to do it?
Yeah, we're going early, so we head off this weekend. We're going to go and play Scotland up in Edinburgh. Both teams are actually going to go and play Scotland. We're slightly earlier than the Black Ferns, but that'll help us get over all the travel, and get the time zones done, and then we've got a week training in Edinburgh, and we go down into the village game day -5, so it becomes like a normal tournament for us, which is great. It's a 3-day tournament. 2, 2 and 2, so same as Olympics. We're well versed in what those tournaments feel like now. Some big breaks in the middle of the day, but it's as I say, it feels like we're a proper rugby team again. We've played 4 tournaments. We've recovered. We've won and we've lost some. We've learnt some stuff. We've tried to improve. So it feels really good going there, thinking, we feel like our game's in a really good spot. You said about training, we had some game of rugby yesterday. It was as good a training session as I can remember, the way the boys went at it yesterday. So
brilliant.
So that's exciting before you jump on the flight on the weekend. We've got one more training tomorrow, just to tidy a couple of little things up that we want for playing in Scotland. But we feel like we're in a really, really exciting space to go there and attack it.
Brilliant. Our partners at SAP pride themselves on powering the best run team. So we're going to talk to our guest today, Clark, a little bit about what he considers success factors on and off the pitch. Firstly, mate, your time in high performance rugby, any common factors for success stand out? Can you think of anything in particular?
Hard work. I think hard work and growth. People talk about growth mindset, but people that want to work hard and want to learn and develop
a great
usually,
combination.
Yeah. And you talked about Tim Mickelson. The reason Timmy's been in this team for so long is because he wants to work hard every day and he wants to be better every day. And it's no different, if you look at the All Blacks, I look at like an Aaron Smith. Why is he still the best halfback in New Zealand? Because he wants to be better and he wants to work hard. And I don't know him that well, but you can see it. You've watched him train a couple of times. So I think those two attributes are great foundations, and I'm sure there'll be very few. There's the odd maverick, isn't there, that maybe doesn't work quite as hard as others. But ultimately, the great sports people are the people that want to really develop and grow and have a mindset around that, but are willing to really put the work in.
And what about for you, mate, as a coach? What do you do to continue to grow and develop?
Well, the same, I guess, or I'd like to think so. You're so lucky now that information's easy to get a hold of. Speaking to people at other parts of the world is easy, whether it's through Zoom or through Twitter or through WhatsApp. It's really easy to connect with different people. So certainly as a coaching group, we use some people to, through New Zealand Rugby, and we've got a mentor overseas that we use around our coaching. So we get feedback regular around, how we're going as coaches and more around how we coach rather than what we're coaching. So that's been a big part of what we've tried to improve as a group of coaches and myself. And working hard, people talk a lot about balance. Balance ain't 50-50 if you want to be really good at something, in my eyes. It's important, you have your community and you have your kids and your family, but ultimately, if you want to be good at something, you've got to put the work in. So that's my, I'm well aware that balance can be 80-20 at certain periods of the year, but come post-World Cup, you can flick that on its head and you can get your balance that way. So,
would you recognise a young Clark Laidlaw if you look back through the glass 15, 20 years ago?
I was a mechanical engineer when I left school, so I worked in a factory for 7 years, clocking in and out. So I genuinely feel so fortunate to work in a sport that I love. You know, I've said to numerous people that rugby's it's basically given me everything I've got in my life. You know, I've played rugby and I work in rugby. It gives me a job that I can get up at whatever time it requires in the morning and come happy to work.
Yeah.
And I think if you get your job right and your family right, you know, you make a good choice around your partner, or she makes a good choice, or he makes a good choice, then those two things combined, you know, I genuinely feel fortunate. You know, I've got an amazing family, an amazing wife, and three daughters, and a job I love. So I'm a pretty lucky man at the minute.
Absolutely. And mate, lastly, any sporting teams or individuals that you admire as being high-performing teams? I know we talked a little bit at the start of the interview, but anyone that really intrigues you?
Oh, yeah, there's heaps.
Yeah.
You know, you look around all the sport, you know, I like my football.
Yeah.
You know, I follow managers. I used to love following Alex Ferguson at Man United. I guess I've jumped ship and I quite like Pep Guardiola at Man City, but I like a Pep or a Jurgen Klopp. You know, I read a couple of amazing articles around Liverpool, around how they've built the sort of head, body and soul of Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah.
So there's some amazing reading online. You know, you talk about what you do to be better. But so I enjoy, you know, I said Kerr before, the basketball coach. You know, you don't have to look too far, do you, from the All Blacks. No. Their ability to win over such a long period in a small country. You know, when you start actually putting that in context, 5 million people to dominate a sport professionally, you know, for the last 20 years, really, you know, for 100 years, but in a professional environment where money and numbers of people playing the sport become really important, New Zealand's ability to stay at the top's remarkable, and it's, you know, I think it's something New Zealanders should be really proud of, and all their teams. You know, you look at men, women, sevens, 15s. So yeah, you don't have to look too far, do you, to be inspired around improving and trying to stay ahead.
Absolutely, mate. Last question. Where to here for you and for Sevens? So we get back from Com Games, got World Cup as well, so a couple of massive pinnacle events this year for the program. But it's been a pretty disrupted, phenomenal last couple of 2 or 3 years. Like, you know, whether it's your insights because you're in it, like, what's the future for the Sevens, and do you want to continue to be a part of that, or are there new challenges on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I think the future of Sevens is exciting. I think the countries around the world, how tight it's becoming, I think the women's game will replicate that quite quickly. You know, you've got New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, you look at Canada, USA in the women's game, England. So I think the Sevens game's only going to continue to grow if World Rugby and the home unions keep investing in it and keep it front of mind and use it the way it should be around its own sport, but it can inspire and develop people to play 15s. It's male and female, it's an Olympic sport. It's got so much going for it if we all embrace it and keep pushing for it to improve. And that's my hope. You know, I love Sevens. I hope that over the next 4 to 10 years it still grows and develops. I guess on a personal front, you know, it's I'd like to coach 15s again at one stage, whether that's now or in the near future or further down the track. You know, will be interesting. There's obviously another Olympics. It's not too far away. You don't have to think 5 years. You're only thinking 2 years after this year, so it's a bit closer. And as I say, it's a pretty cool place to live and work, isn't it? So it's hard to pride yourself out of the Bay of Plenty and Mount Maunganui. So yeah, we'll get through, you know, these 2 pinnacle events. You know, it'll be great to get some downtime, because after the Olympics it felt like there was a lot going on around keeping the programme going and the teams going. So yeah, we'll get through these 2 pinnacle events, and hopefully I'm going back to Scotland for a holiday at Christmas. So I'm looking forward to that. My family's not been home for 3 years, so that's probably the immediate. You know, get through these 2 pinnacles, dust ourselves off, and get a little break before we start the Olympic qualification year, which is it's coming around real quick.
Mate, thank you for coming in and chatting to us. I know it's always flat out trying to get everything in place before you get on the plane and get up to Scotland first and then off to the tournament. So I appreciate you spending some time with us, and good luck. I hope it goes well. Good luck to the lads. We'll all be tuning in and wishing you all the success.
Cheers, thank you.
The All Blacks podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black be the best run in sports. Hosted by Rob Dunn in the Hargrave Street studio. Produced by Carl Thompson from Blue and Ginge, the podcast producers. Video editing by Mac Leesburg, graphics by Western Design, content advising from Andy Burt, and commercial manager for the podcast is Valeska Hoth. Follow the All Blacks podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts.